Welcome to part 2 of episode 3 of the Tier 6 Strongholds guides. In this video, I'll be giving a short guide to each map playable in Tier 6 Strongholds from each map side. If you're looking for a specific map, please skip to that labeled map section. Keep in mind that I'm really just showing the starting positions of these vehicles, and I won't be basing it off of a specific enemy team lineup. It'll be up to you to adjust from these starting positions depending on what's happening each individual game. I'll be using this lineup in each example. If you want to know why I'm using this lineup and why it is one of my favorites, please watch part 1 of this video linked right here. If you don't have the tanks to fill up this lineup for whatever reason, or you have an excess of a certain tank that you don't really need multiple of, like a tank destroyer or a light tank, these lineups can still work. Just keep in mind that as a caller you're going to have to adapt slightly. For example, if you're bringing heavy tanks, keep in mind that those heavy tanks could play with the medium spots, but you have to make sure that you're not going to overextend them too far, because then bringing them back would be a pain. All that's fun stuff. If you want to know what program I'm using to demonstrate all of these strats, it is a website called Stratsketch. I will leave a link to it in the description down below. And then 2 quick things I need to say. 1, you do not necessarily have to use this exact lineup. As long as you have tanks that are similar to the tanks that I'm using in this demonstration, you can still do these strats. And 2, these strats will not work 100% of the time, and you have to be able to adjust them depending on what the enemy team is bringing or what the enemy team is doing throughout the battle. Please do not blame me if it goes wrong. Alright, here we go. Alright, so first things first, we're going to look at Abbey from the north side. And really, the easiest thing to do on Abbey from the north side is to just stick all of your 85Ms up the hill like this. And this is true for both sides, but I'm just going to say it now. When you move your 85Ms up here, you do not want to take the low road here. You want to take the upper road here. The reason for that is that you're going to want to stick your Hellcat here on this side of the rock so that he can see all the way down the midline. If the enemy team is playing entirely middle, which you probably will know by how much stuff the Hellcat spots here, what you want to do is be able to have your 85Ms able to park themselves here, or even here, depending on how aggressively the enemy team is playing, as soon as possible. If you go all the way around, it takes way too long, and it's the exact same thing from the other side, but I'll get to that in a little bit. Anyway, the 85M's jobs are to just play pretty aggressively on this side. You should be able to win the 1-2 line against any team. You win all the way up to about here, and then you can start firing into mid or whatever. If they have any tanks in mid, you can stop here. You can farm the middle from there. Meanwhile, the Type 64 has 2 things he can do. You can spot up the 8 line, but you stop here. You don't push all the way up the 8 line, because the Type can't win any fights by itself. Or you put the Type in middle. He doesn't come all the way up the middle. It's very important. You don't push the Type all the way up through middle. You keep him on this ridge line. He puts in maybe 1 shot and sees what's there. If they're all in the middle, then the Type 64 can pull back to the back side of these buildings, so they have to overpush onto him. In which case, this 85M and any other friends that you send back with him are able to farm across if they push up like this. Pretty simple. From the south side, it's almost exactly the same. You stick the Hellcat up to here, so he has shots down the middle. You can put the Type on the 8 line, or you can put the Type in the middle, again, depending on whatever you want to do. Stick the 85Ms up here. You want to go up the ramp, not around the ramp, unless you're setting up an ambush, which really doesn't... It's not necessary at Tier 6. If you can win the 1-2 line pretty easily, you can push all the way up. If you don't think you can win the 1-2 line easily, you can sit here for a little bit and then move up once you know what the enemy team is doing. On this side, it's actually pretty viable to stick 2 85Ms in the middle like this, and then play a little bit slower on this line. And the 85Ms should be able to win the mid line. If you do that, though, I would definitely be sending the Type over to the 8 line. And it's very important that if you stick the 85Ms in mid, you don't park them next to each other. A lot of teams think that it's a good idea to just have all of your tanks in the same spot. It's not. They're going to RD you. You're going to die. It's really not a good idea. So stick 1 85M covering the lower side and 1 85M on the top ridge, and it'll be nice and easy. Alright, next up is Airfield from the eastern side. First, it's pretty simple, as all Tier 6 strats are. You really just play all of your 85Ms up north, and that's pretty much it. The Hellcat is a little bit different, though. You can pick a lot of different things for the Hellcat. You can put him here, you can put him up here. If they have a bunch of heavy tanks, up here is usually a good idea. I usually keep him here. If you have the Type 64, send the Type here. If you want to, make sure that the Type stays alive. Say the enemy team has Cromwells or something, and you're confident that you can at least hold up top. You can leave one of the 85Ms back here. It's a very nice position to keep the Type 64 alive. And then you have the 85Ms like this. Keep in mind, if you make this play, do not push like this. You're going to get farmed from middle. It's better to just go around to the north side. The only real counter to that is if they have an enemy tank, say, right around this area here. In which case, all you have to do is play it a little bit slower. If they're super camping on this map, you take all the way up to here. Besides that, it's up to you guys. Alright, as with most maps, the other side of the map is pretty similar. Send the type here. You can also send the type up here, depending on where they spawn and if you really want to. I usually just leave them here. Bring all the 85Ms up like this. Go ahead and fight everything that they have over there with your 85Ms. You support them with the Hellcat that will sit back here on the ridgeline. The Hellcat can also play up here. Again, it depends on whether or not you think that they're going to be pushing around the north end of this. The Hellcat can also play here if you want to support the Type 64 more than anything else. 85Ms can take all the way up like this. One thing that I forgot to mention, from the other side, if the enemy team is super camping, don't play here. From the eastern side I'm talking about, don't play here. You're going to get countered. This bush really just does not work effectively. It's really just better to take up to this. The way you do want to counter a camp like this is by putting all of your 85Ms around the north side here, just like this, and taking over this ridge first. From this ridge, you can get this into a crossfire because you'll have a Hellcat and the Type 64 in mid, and you could also shoot it from here. The problem with this ridge line is if you try to break a camp from this ridge line, it's so close to where the enemy team might be sitting that you can very easily get spotted for this. The only other camp I see sometimes, I saw sometimes in the lower ranks, is some people will stick stuff here, and then they'll also stick stuff here. It's pretty easy to break. Just go to here. These guys can't shoot you. Shoot this. Nice and easy. And if they do it from the north side, send as many tanks as you think you need to claim this. After you claim this, it's the exact same thing. You can free farm this. Alright. Alright, here's one that a ton of people make mistakes on, and it's Cliff. First off, Hellcat. Always here. Always. This is like the best spot on this entire map for a TD. It's ridiculously good. Now, what most people I see try to do is take Donut. Don't do that. Don't take Donut on this map. There's no point in taking Donut on this map. At tier 8, you can send a couple tanks to Donut because you have 10 tanks. You really can't afford to lose any tanks on this map at tier 6. So what you do is you bring all of your medium tanks up to here. The reason for that is, if they take Donut, all you do is sit in the middle of these rocks and up the ridges. You could bring... The light tank should really be going all the way up the hill. You sit in all these ridge lines and the rocks, and then you shoot them. They don't have better positions from the Donut. That's the problem. And if they push out this way, the Hellcat counters them. You can even leave an 85M here, is actually a really good idea. And then this guy can pull back a little bit to farm into this. He can move forwards a little bit to farm into this. If they push like this, up the 1-2 line, you bring this guy back. And it's easy. Type 64 is spotting literally everything from here. If they have a TD back here, you shoot into it. The only real problem with this strat is if they take topside as well as Donut, in which case you're in a crossfire. In that case, just pick one side to kill. Usually the easiest one is this side. You really don't have to push too far in order to kill that. But yeah, if they're splitting their forces like that, you just have to push into one side. Alright, south side, once again, the exact same thing. Type goes up to hill, Hellcat goes here, 85s are playing in here. The only little change that you can make is that if you really want to, you can send one 85M here. He sits on this corner. If he sees a bunch of stuff coming up that way, he puts in one, maybe two shots, and then pulls back to here. The reason you can get away with this on this side of the map is because you have a little bit more more flexibility with regards to the Hellcat supporting this, as well as the tanks up here can just push across if need be. It's easier from the south side, really. Personally, I do that about half the time if I think that's going to be an issue. But it really is just super easy to just sit in these rocks and farm everything that goes Donut. Taking a look at Halluf, once again, it's a pretty simplistic map. We just split the medium tanks between the top side and the bottom side of this side of the map. Now, here's an important thing that I'll actually mention. Just because I see this mistake happening quite a bit. When you play this top side of the hill, do not commit into this bottom area until you are sure that you are going to be pushing back out of the bottom area. And this goes for either side, because on the opposite side, as you'll see in a second, you're going to be having the exact same setup, but again, on the opposite side. So for both sides, though, from this north side here, where all of your mediums are, you do not want to commit into the dip until you are certain that you are going to be pushing up into the opposite side of the dip. The reason for this is because the way that the T-3485Ms work, you're really just not going to have any gun depression to counter this, and what I see a lot of teams do is they commit all 3 of their tanks, or however many medium tanks they have, commit all of them down below here, and then the enemy team from the top of the ridge can just farm them really easily as soon as they try to poke over. Plus, if you have the Hellcat defending like this, and if you get overrun on the top side, the Hellcat can pull back to right here, and from this position you could shoot into this spot. Besides that, another mistake I see a lot is that these tanks will cross into this. Don't do that with both. You can do it with one. Definitely don't do it with everything, otherwise this will get overpushed really easily. And don't do it if they're all sitting here. The easiest way to win this map is to just shoot better than they do. You really don't have to do anything fancy. Don't overextend too far. Just sit on the corners and shoot better than they do. So this is probably the worst map to try to break a camp on, because it's really, really easy for people to camp on it. Because it's a very simple map to camp. You stick 1, maybe 2 tanks here, you stick 1, maybe 2 tanks here. You have 1 tank up here, 1 tank here, 1 tank here. That's it. That's all people will do. Now, for a lot of these strats, I'll be able to go over with you guys how exactly to break a camp. Problem is, with this map, there's really no definite way. You just have to play better than them. The easiest way to get it started, though, is to go everything below like this, except for 1 tank up top. That's it. Every single tank goes below, around like this, to get below here. You can bring the Type 64 out and start playing over here if you want to. Hellcat's going to be providing support fire on anything that pushes down into these guys. You can go over to here with the 85s if you want to. Problem is that this guy here can play against you at the top of the ridge. If you think you can outplay him, great, you can still play here. Pretty much what you want to do is poke up as little as possible. From these spots, you should be minimizing the amount of crossfire you'll be getting yourself into, and shoot them as much as you can. If they have a tank back here, this is what you want to drop arty on, because this is the biggest pain in the ass to get rid of. Don't ever go up this way. You're going to get farmed from over here, and then you lose too much health for that. You have to play below here and shoot better than they do. Again, this is the map. This map in particular is probably the hardest camp to break. I'm scared to tell you this, because there's probably some of you watching that will be like, hey, we can just camp. It'll be easy. Please don't. It's really fucking annoying. It takes forever to break, and most of the time you're not going to win. But, whatever. What do I know? Good luck, guys. So one of my favorite maps, which is, of course, Himmelsdorf. This one's really fun to do for me, because I usually just tell my team to do the usual, and I don't have to be very specific. But as far as your original calls, until you guys get used to it, 1 tank here, 1 tank on this ridge, 1 tank here, 1 tank here, and 1 tank here. And you could stick the Hellcat here if you want to, and that will free up this 85M to do whatever you want. You can stick 2 on the 8 line, that's fine. You can send the Type to the 1-2 line, you can send the Type to Hill, depends on what they have. If they have a lot of tanks that you think will be dangerous for them sending Hill, don't send the Type Hill. If you think they're going to be bum rushing 1-2 line, send the Type over there. The only thing about this strat is that it's a little bit difficult to rotate. So for newer callers, this is a really good map to learn how to move your teams around in order to respond to whatever situation. Because obviously you cannot keep this positioning for the entire game. You have to be able to respond to wherever they end up pushing. A lot of the lower level teams on this map will literally just push either 1-2 line. A lot of people do 8 line. Never, ever, ever, ever put your entire team on 8 line on this map. It happens a lot. It upsets me. If you do that, all they have to do, all the enemy team has to do, and if the enemy does this to you, all you have to do to counter the 8 line is you have 1 tank back here, you have a couple tanks here, everything that's here turns around so it's facing down this way, they drive past this, and then you shoot them. That's it. They lose half of their health here just from trying to cross this. This Type can come to here and farm like this. This Hellcat can come to here and farm like this. This is in a crossfire now. Then you bring the rest of the 85Ms up, and you could send one over here if you want to, but these guys come around and you just follow them. Usually they do that with Cromwell pushes. It's a really bad idea. Don't do it. Against a competent team, it's not going to work. Same thing on the 1-2 line. If they're pushing the 1-2 line, you just cycle everything over. If they're not doing anything and they're doing the exact same thing as you are on the opposite side of the map, which is, of course, exactly what you should be doing. You can do the exact same thing on the opposite side of the map. Again, if they do that, all you have to do is shoot better than they do. And if they decide to push a single line, rotate your tanks over. It's nice and easy. The only time I'll change this strat is if I see the entire enemy team is running Cromwells or something, in which case I'll keep my 85Ms a little bit closer together so that you're able to farm the crap out of them. So for Karelia, pretty much, you have a lot of different options for this one, so you can pretty much do whatever you want depending on what their lineup is and whatever you're comfortable with as a color. For this one, it's actually pretty useful. If you have 2 Cromwells or any fast tanks like that, you can send them north. These 85Ms just on the bottom corner, you do not push hill off the bat. The reason for this is because at tier 6, a lot of people think that's a good idea. And it technically could work if your team is really good, but it's really, really easy to just sit on this corner here with 3, 4, 5 and fire across, especially because Artie's not going to be droppable while you're doing that. Pretty much, you can get 1 to 2 free kills for them trying to take hill. And then once they take hill, it's really not that big of a disadvantage for you. This type will be spotting anything like this. If you don't want the Hellcat here, you can bring him back. Usually I bring the Hellcat here and then I'll just cycle 85Ms back. You can bring them all the way back up to north. Again, if you wanted to, you can bring the 85Ms up north for the first place. If you do that, then you want to make sure that you're like this before you push all the way in, just in case they bum rush with everything up there. If you want to do something like that, you can also bring the type up north to spot for the 85s, and you can only bring 185 up north if you want to. Again, there's a lot of different combinations you can do with this map. The rule of thumb, though, the big mistake that everybody does, don't push hill. Really bad idea. You can push north, technically, if you want to with everything. It's a lot more viable from the other side, so if you want to push everything up north, that's okay. Thing to keep in mind if you're trying to do that, because a lot of teams try to do that, and it usually ends up the same way. If you are pushing north, it's going to take you a lot longer to get to their base than it will take them to get to your base from the south side. So if you want to push north, you have to leave some tanks back, otherwise you'll lose by capping pretty quickly. But yeah, usually I never push north. It's really just overcomplicating things. Just sit on this corner. Most every team will try to take the hill aggressively. It works at higher tiers sometimes. At tier 6, it's not a good idea. You're going to get farmed. And then as soon as that happens, if you didn't do enough damage to just repush with everything, then just bring tanks back. Nice and easy. And then you go around to the north side. Or you can play it slow, or you can go on the outside here. It's pretty self-explanatory. You just have to figure out the ways to rotate. Alrighty, so as far as Live Oaks goes, from the north side, it's going to be drastically different from the south side. You want to stick the Hellcat up here. You want the Type 64 to try to play up to here if possible. Depending on how many light tanks or Cromwells or whatever the enemy team has, you might not want to send your Type out so aggressively. I usually put 1 extra 85M up here, and then I stick the rest along like this. You can technically put 1 on this building, you just have to make sure to move him pretty much right off the bat. And then these 3 are sitting here. Pretty much from the north side, it's a lot easier to play in this area than it is to be trying to push down this way. Pretty much an explanation of your original play. Type goes here. Any light tank that they send here, you should kill, because you have every single tank on your team pre-aimed on this. The only risk is that if they play super aggressively to like up to here, it takes a long time for these guys to get their guns down onto them, in which case if they have any tanks back here, they will be farming whatever tries to kill that. So that's why this tank is pretty useful. This tank can pretty much farm whatever pushes aggressively into here for free. As soon as that happens, all these tanks can move up into here. You play pretty aggressively. This Hellcat is providing support fire the entire time. This 85M goes like this, and this 85M goes like this. The reason you're completely ignoring this line, and why I don't like playing on this line very much, is that if they take all the way up this line, usually what teams will do is say, hey, look, we're free. We can just cap. And then they cap, and then you have a Hellcat on this ridge to just turn around and farm. You can send the Type back to, like, here, farm. These 85s, by that point, will have completely overrun the base, and you win. From the opposite side, it's a bit different, and it really depends on your lineup. If you have any fast tanks, send them to here. It's pretty nice. You do this exact same thing with the Type, except with only 2 supporting. You can bring the Hellcat to here as, like, a mediator for both sides. If you do that, though, and you send a couple of your 85Ms up north, you cannot hard push south. So what you need to do south is just play a little bit passively back here until you know where they are. However, if you do not send those two 85Ms up north and you instead want to play completely south, all you do is play super aggressively all the way south as fast as possible. This 85M could stay up here until the very end, just in case you guys get hard pushed from the north. If you don't send anything to support the type, just bring the type back a bit. There's really no reason to send a light tank out aggressively. That's another mistake I see a lot of people make. Don't send the light tank out for an aggressive spotting run if there's nothing that's going to shoot what he spots anyway. There's really no point. You're just going to sacrifice a light tank, and you'll get a little bit of info, sure, but it's really not worth it, especially at tier 6 where you don't have enough tanks anyway. Hellcat can stay here for a little while to help with this. If they have a large push coming this way, don't leave the Hellcat here. Bring it back. Then you can leave 185M here, 185M here if you really want to, and then the rest can just go through, try to cap. The way to push on this map, you cannot go straight to cap because they can do what I was just talking about. What you want to do, stick one, maybe two 85s here, and whatever's left you send around this river here, up, and to this position here. From this position here, you can counter anything that they have sitting back here, which is usually where they are. If they are not, then you bring all these tanks all the way up. Oh, all the way up, I said. And this tank here goes around to like this. Or from here, you can farm anything pushing this outside here. Nice and simple. It's really hard to camp on this map. Don't camp on this map. Competent team will beat you. Again, if you're countering a camp, just surround them, farm them slowly. Don't YOLO in. And that's it for Karelia. Now on Malinovka. Hill. Just take hill. You can leave maybe 185M here. You can leave one here if you really want to. I wouldn't. At most, leave one of these two. I would leave probably just one in the back rock. Bring that up top. You can put the Hellcat here if you want to. Again, no real reason to cover south, because if they try capping, you can just counter it completely. Send the type to here. This is the best light tank spot on this map, from both sides. You cannot change my mind. At tier 6, I should specify. At tier 8, it's not. And at tier 10, it's definitely not. But at tier 6, this is the best spot. You can spot some people who are playing lazily, trying to get straight up the hill, that aren't hiding in the back dip. You can spot anything that's over here, and as soon as you're out of a job here, all you have to do is move forwards and get into this dip. You can also go around if you think it's safer. If they try capping on this map, you can leave the Hellcat here, bring the 85M back. You can bring 2 back if you really want to. I think usually 1 is fine. And then you decide whether or not you need to YOLO this guy in for spots, or if you need to just play passively. Keep in mind that the hill strat takes a while, so if they do push south, they're going to beat you there. So you can bring another 85M back. Again, it depends on whether or not you think that 185M player that you have back is good enough. And yeah, from the other side, it's pretty much the same thing. This guy's not really all that necessary down here. You can send him uphill as well if you really think you need to. This Type 64, playing the exact same middle spot. Hellcat here, do not put him on this ridge. It's a lot easier to get spotted if you put him on this ridge. And you get pretty much the exact same shots from back here anyway. You just want to counter this. And you can counter anything that tries to push aggressively into base. This guy can be left back just in case you need to cycle him back to base, etc, etc. It's very simple cycling on this map. You just want to take hill. After you take hill, if they're camping, then you just take like baby steps to surround him. You don't actually send anything south to break the camp. You really just want to go to here with 1 tank, and then everything else farms so that everything in this spot here dies. You send the Type 64 to here, same exact thing, the next section dies, and then you send the rest of them down, and they should be down enough health for you to just kill the rest of them at that point. Alright, and now for one of my least favorite maps in the game, which is Mannerheim Line. Send all of your 85Ms up north. Pretty standard stuff. Never ever go south on this map, no matter the tier. South is horrible, don't you dare do it, I will get upset at you. Put the Hellcat up here. Put the Type 64, there is a bush exactly here? Either here or here. You can check it out in the team training room. I'll probably actually be putting a clip in somewhere of the exact spot. You send the Type 64 here, they spot all of this stuff. So all of this crossing will be seen. If the enemy team is stupid enough to send anything south, you'll know. If not, then they'll probably be north, in which case you shoot better than them. And that's about it. This Hellcat is in pretty big danger of their light tank spotting him. If you notice that the Hellcat's in danger, just pull him back. It's really not that important to have that spot. The only thing that this spot is really good for is shooting whatever the type spot's crossing this. The other side is a little bit more complex, but the same general idea. You want 185M going over here. This guy can farm up to this point here on the map, which means that if this Type 64 spots anything pushing him, this 85M can help. If their light tank plays aggressively in mid, this 85M can shoot it. If they play down south for whatever reason, this 85M will know. Hellcat here, again, shooting anything that the type spots. This type is going straight here, so what he does is he goes below, gets up to this point. The reason he does this is because this can spot this crossing here, and this Hellcat can shoot it, this type can shoot it himself. As soon as this crossing happens, don't leave the type here. Just run away with the type, you can bring him back to wherever, send the type wherever you want it. It doesn't really matter. That's the kind of decision you have to make. For the north side with the 85s, because you have less mediums in this strat, you can't just stack everything up and kind of hope for the best. So what you have to do is make sure that you're spread out at least a little bit in case they push in, especially if it's a team with like 7 Cromwells or whatever. Couple 85s playing on the corner, 185 playing wide in these rocks and bushes areas just in case they hard push all the way in, and 185M back here. If this map is probably the worst for camping, besides maybe El Halluf. So this map and El Halluf are the most common maps to have enemy teams camping. Usually it's going to be on this side of the map that the enemy team will be camping, and I'm actually going to run through this just so I can explain how to break a camp that sucks this badly, because this camp is really annoying. So let's say they have medium tanks here, they might have a tank destroyer sitting back here, they will probably have a couple mediums here, and they'll have whatever is left probably here and here. So this is if they're camping correctly. If they're camping correctly, it sucks a lot more than if they're camping incorrectly. The way to counter this, I would send the Type 64 over here. This guy can try to shoot at this guy. The Type 64 should be a good player so that they're able to actually counter this. You bring the Hellcat over to about here to provide support fire. If the Type 64 gets bum rushed, which would be the correct play for them to counter this position, then you just run away with the Type. And in that case, they should have sacrificed at least one tank. Every single other tank on your team goes north. This is one of the only camps where the best strategy is to just bum rush. Usually what you do is take 4 tanks and you charge them straight over this section here and into this back ridge. The reason for that is, at the most, you'll have to fight directly about 3 tanks. If not, if they have like everything stacked back here, then you have to play it slow. But if they don't, and they're mostly here and here, then you push straight past them and get into this back ridge. The reason for that is from this back ridge, you can farm as much as you want. If they try to repush you, then you have 1 extra 85M on this corner to farm them crossing back in, and you have the Hellcat to farm them crossing back in. And all the while, this Type 64 is annoying them with the shots. So again, this map really, really sucks when the enemy team camps. This one and El Halluf are the hardest ones to break, but this is one way that I enjoy breaking the camps. At least at tier 6. It really doesn't work this well at tier 8. So, on Magical Forest Murovanka, this is one of the maps where you have a lot of options. I'm going to give you probably the easiest one to do. From the south side, you send 1 tank there along with the Hellcat. You send 1 tank to... you send pretty much every other tank up to here. 1 tank here, 1 tank here. Type 64 goes here. The Type 64 can play aggressively on this line if you want to. The Type 64 can play aggressively in the forest if you want to. Just keep in mind he doesn't have any support fire. This map is a lot easier to play slow. I know that this start looks like it's a super camp, but as soon as you know whether or not they're playing 1-2 line, if they're not playing 1-2 line, you play aggressively up the 1-2 line. If they are playing 1-2 line, then you put this guy here up to this building here. And he has to take a pretty sneaky route in order to do that. And if you want to, you can send the Type all the way wide. Again, it depends on what they're doing. This is one of those strats where you're really just going to have to figure out for yourself what the enemy team is doing and try your best to counter it in whatever way you can. I really can't go... The only way I would be able to simplify that more is if I win over literally every little thing that could happen on this map, and I'm not doing that. From the other side, it's pretty much the opposite. It's really the easiest thing to do is to play aggressively in the forest. You pretty much take over the entire forest line. Usually what happens on this map is that the enemy team from the south side will be playing the 1-2 line, and you'll take over the forest. And then it turns into an east-west fight. The way to win after an east-west fight, so pretty much if their team's all the way on this side of the map and your team's all the way on this side of the map, what you do is you send 1 tank back just to make sure that they can't cap. You bring most of your 85s playing like this. You send 1 tank south, It could be your light tank, just so you have that extra camo value. It could be an 85, depending on what you want to do. And then you need to play... Pretty much, you have to play this perfectly if you want to be able to break away their camp. End goal is to get one tank here, one tank here, one tank here, and then this tank supporting. Pretty much what you want to be able to do is inch your way across this while being able to shoot anything that overpokes on these ridges with all the tanks that are supporting. So this tank, and this tank should be shooting anything that overpokes. And as soon as you're able to take below here or below here, so not both, just one or the other. As soon as you're able to take one of those without being farmed from the opposite hill, so if they have tanks here, then this is going to get farmed, and if they have tanks here, then this is going to get farmed. So as soon as you're able to do this without getting farmed for this, so you have to kill the stuff on the ridge before you do this, but once you do that, you win. Alright, Mines is the easiest map to call on in the game. You bring your 85Ms up, you bring one, maybe one, wide. You bring your Hellcat back to here. You send your type wherever. It does not matter where you send your type. You can send them here. You can send them up the hill if you think you can win hill. I don't know why there's an 85 up here. You could send them wide. If you have two fast tanks, then, or however many fast tanks that you brought in your lineup, you could send them uphill straight away. If you don't have fast tanks, don't send the 85Ms uphill. Another important thing, which I'm actually going to demonstrate on the opposite side of the map, if you lose hill, do not play, I put this guy out here on purpose, do not play this spot. Do not play this spot if you lose hill. Reason for that is that at this tier, it's really hard to repush with only 7 tanks, especially with this lineup. The Hellcat is playing support, so it's suppressing anything that comes on this ridge. But if they play on this ridge and they line themselves up with this tower here, then they can free farm whatever comes out here. And as soon as they kill that, then they can push in and then you'll die. Do not put anything wide. It's very important. If you lose hill, don't go wide with your tanks. You stick to the very edge of the castle. You can play up here and you can out-trade them. Again, that's a thing with the 85Ms. If you really, really have to do something fancy and they've committed all of their tanks here, you can send the type up to here, and then this guy can farm the back of these guys. This Type 64 from this position can kill anything that's over here. But really, you're going to be relying on your 85Ms just to shoot better than the opponent on this map. Like I said, it's a very, very simple map. 99 times out of 10, they're going to be going to the center hill, and you're just going to have a shootout. Alright, here's another one of those maps where people think it's a good idea to camp. It is not. The best thing for you to do on this map, funnily enough, is to just play the middle ridge. This is true for both sides. You just make sure that you're spread out a little bit. I would stick 2 tanks here, but besides that, you can just tell your players to spread out wherever they want to. If I had a choice, this would be about where I would put them. And then you can stick your Hellcat back here to be supporting them. You can stick them up top. You can stick them here. If you think you need to, if you think that they're going to be bum rushing 1-2 line, bring 1 extra 85M up here. And then your type plays aggressively on the center ridge for the beginning. And then what he does is this exact run. I'm going to click and drag his little character. He does this run, crests the ridge to see what they have, comes over the rail line, and then runs away. The reason for this is because the only real risk to this strategy is if they're completely putting everything here and you don't react fast enough for it. If you see that they're putting everything here, then all you do is you shore up this defense here. You bring these guys over. You can take into this bowl if you want to. You can take all the way up 1-2 line if you want to, if they have enough tanks over here. And then you just shoot them. It's nice and simple. Thing to remember that I see a lot of people making the mistake of for some reason. Don't cap on this map. It's not worth it. Don't cap on either side of this map unless the enemy team is completely out of position. From the south side, you can get farmed from this hill. From the north side, if they have the 1-2 line, they can reset you from that. Pretty much, the cap circles on this map are really, really, really rarely useful. So I would avoid them if at all possible. And from the opposite side of the map, it's the exact same thing. I'm not going to go over anything in particular, except how to break a camp, because people really like camping on this map. If you know how to break it, camping does not work. What you do is you send 185M here. The rest of them can just line up on the top of the ridgeline, because they're camping in the back of the 1-2 line, they're giving you complete control over everywhere else, so use it. You can bring the Hellcat up, you can bring this 85M up. All of these tanks are going to be aiming at whatever they have in this corner. Then what you do is you keep your type alive, and you send him through this line here. If you don't think you can send him there immediately, you send him through this. Either way. You want to send him through this line here. He plays the ridge of this. As soon as one tank gets impatient and tries to shoot at him, they get spotted. Every single one of your tanks absolutely obliterates him. It's nice and easy. Then you can send this tank. Eventually, you can bring him over the next ridge and play him into here. If you can't do that, then you bring the 85M up to do that. If any of these spouters, if any of these spotters happen to die, you bring in a different one, and these guys are dead. And you just keep doing that until they're all dead. You will kill more of them than they kill of you, because you only have to send in one light tank at a time. And while that's happening, every single other tank on your team is farming the crap out of them. Don't camp on this map. It's not going to work. So for Redshire, which is another map I see a lot of mistakes for, send a couple mediums to the castle. It depends on how many you think you need. You can bring 2, you can bring 3. Don't really need to play the 9-0 line on this map. You can if you really want to. I prefer not to. I find it's a lot easier to just kill everything on this line anyway, and it's a lot faster. Hellcat's going to be supporting the sniping. The Type 64 can go 9-0 line. You could stick him in the passive bush over here if you really want to, or you can just have him play all the way up. Depends on what he meets over there. These 85Ms are the reason that I see a lot of mistakes on this map. Don't play all the way up to here right off the bat with the 85s. You stick them back in the back until you have control over castle. The reason for that is that if you play up here, then anything that they send castle can shoot this 85M section pretty easily. And then you win castle, and then you win this side. Pretty self-explanatory. Just win. It's easy. And once again, because we're not creative at tier 6, we do the exact same thing on the other side. The only little change is that the 85Ms can play all the way up from the get-go. This Type 64 wants to play up to here. If he doesn't see anything, then he can move up to here. This Hellcat's giving him support fire the whole time. These 85Ms should win castle once again. If you really want to guarantee winning castle, bring one of the 85Ms from here all the way up to this corner here while supporting from this side and this side with the other 2. And then you're good to go. And Ruinberg, which is another pretty simple one. Type 64 spots this. All of the mediums go into this city here. The reason for this is because at tier 6, the field wins this map. If you win this section of the map here, you win the map. If they send stuff down this line, do not stop to shoot them. You have to get into the buildings before you start fighting things. You can shoot on the move if you want to, but if you stop here and they take the buildings before you get into position, then you're going to die very quickly. This Hellcat can play in the back here. You can move him up to here if you want to. I would usually just leave him here. He shoots anything that tries to play the midline. If they stick anything here, or if they're playing here, so you don't get in a crossfire, when you push this line, you want to push all the way down the 0 line. The only thing that may cause you problems is if they play full city from the north side and they start capping. If they do that, you can bring 185M back. From the south side, I should mention really quick. If you want to, you can stick an 85M in this window here. It's not a bad spot. In that case, you can bring this guy back to defend. You should bring the Hellcat back to here. As soon as you see that this is clear, you should be moving the Hellcat. And you can bring one extra tank back if you want to about here. And then they can't cap. The other tanks just go straight to the cap. Nice and simple. Alright, Sand River. So with this lineup, the easiest thing for me to do is to play north, no matter which side I'm on. So if you have fast tanks, you can send them up to here. You can send both fast tanks up to there if you have them. If you don't have fast tanks, send the light tank up to spot that ridgeline, so that you know if they're going to be playing above you. From that, you have a couple 85Ms positioned like this. You can have one 85M or 2 covering south, but you don't push them past this area unless you're playing full south. And then this extra 85M could be a TD with the Hellcat for the beginning. As soon as this Type C stuff, you can decide whether or not you want to fully commit north, or if they're playing full north, then you can bring these guys back and around just to support, and then you can take over south if they're playing full north with these guys. This is another one of those strats where it's very reactionary. Depending on what the information the type gets you, you decide whether or not you want to move to whatever location. If they're pushing full north, they're gonna die. It's as simple as that. If they're pushing full south, you bring these guys back. These guys completely take over the north ridge and pre-aim at this, and again, you shoot them as they push, they all die. If you need to push, if they're super camping, just play full north. It's usually the easiest way to do it. You can shoot better than they do in order to dig them out. If you don't think that you can shoot better than they do, or you don't trust your rotation very well, then a good way to just get out of jail free card is to push every single tank you have all the way down the south line and take all the way up into this position here. I don't do it very often because it's not very reliable, but if you think it's more reliable than you trying to baby step your way to break the camp, then do it. Opposite side's pretty much the exact same thing, except you're splitting up your team a little bit more. The reason that's okay on this map is because as long as these guys down south don't go out too far, these guys up north can always take over the north ridge and farm down south if they decide to push south. If they're super camping, same exact thing, pick a side, push it, or take it the baby step way and surround them. Either way it works, and yeah, that's it. I really don't like Serene Coast, but that's really just because it's so repetitive. They're going to push one of two spots. They're going to push one line, or they're going to push straight down the middle. I've noticed recently that pushing straight down the middle has become a lot more popular. All I do to counter that is I leave one or two tanks right here, depending on how possible you think it is that they're going to push straight down the middle. You leave a couple tanks on this ridge line, and then that is completely countered, because this is all a crossfire. If they play below, like this, all you have to do is take up the hill with one, maybe two T-34-85Ms, and then if they try to push out any of these areas, these guys get free shots in. This Type 64 is coming up here aggressively just to see if they're pushing all the way up this one line. If they are, and you see that they're pushing up the one line, depending on how many they have, you might want to bring whatever you have over here over to this position to counter that, or you can play them through mid and then do the exact opposite thing. So you push up this line, and then everything from here gets side shots into this. You can play them up on the rail here. You can send them all the way to cap. It doesn't matter. It's really based upon what you want to do. But again, the starting positions are pretty much the same no matter what the enemy team lineup has. I don't like this map. It's very boring. And from the opposite side of the map, pretty self-explanatory. You send the Type 64 out to do whatever he wants. A nice position on this map is these bushes. I believe it's here. Can spot straight across if they push 8-9 line. They never ever will, but if for some reason they do, now you'll know. Most of the time, again, one line or they'll push down mid. If they push down mid, you have this tank and this tank counter it. If you want to be extra safe from the midline push, you can leave one tank, one 85M around here. You can bring him back to here if you want to. You can leave him back here. Again, any of those positions will help get a crossfire going for that stuff pushing. If they're pushing straight back, all you have to do is bring this stuff back. Usually what I'll do is I'll play aggressively with the type on this line, just so I know if they're pushing down mid straight away, so I can bring back the tanks before they get too far. Otherwise it gets annoying. South side's a little bit more tricky to play, but it's pretty simple if you have the light tank. Just get the light tank to see wherever they're going. Don't play down midline. It's really too easy to counter. Easiest way to guarantee a win on this map is by taking over the one line. So steps. Steps is always a fun one. Easiest thing to do on steps, send the light tank out into the midline. This bush next to this rock here can spot this crossing here. It also may counter the enemy light tank depending on how stupid the enemy light tank is. Send 185M out to this rock. The reason you do that is so that you'll know if they're hard pushing like this and they have to kill this guy in order to push all the way up. You have one tank above just to make sure that you can support this. It can be the Hellcat or an 85M. It doesn't matter. You can swap these guys' positions. If you want to have the extra gun depression and camo, do that. If they're pushing 8-9 line, then you bring these two guys that were supporting the light tank straight over, and you play above, and as soon as they reach into this spot, this is your little kill zone pocket, you just shoot them as soon as they drive into this. Type 64 can either come back, or it can push all the way up and around and start farming them from the back. Hellcat can come over as well. Again, the opposite side of the map is fairly similar. You have one medium tank behind the rock here, you have one medium tank on the ridge below, you have one medium tank up top to make sure that that top side is being shot at if anything tries to play aggressively up there. Hellcat and 85M left at base to support the light tank who's spotting it cross like this. This south side of the map is a little bit more common to camp on. You really can't full bum rush any side on this map. Just try to outspot them and kill them one at a time. Take up to this hill if they're super camping, stuff like that. You can take on the inside of this if they're not playing this area here. You can send one medium tank through mid. Lots of things you can do to break the camp. Again, camping's a bad idea if the enemy team knows what they're doing, and knowing what you're doing definitely comes with practice. So here's another map that's pretty boring. You stick the Hellcat back here to support either side. You stick 185M up here, 185M slightly behind him, and then stick the other 3 going down south. Now this strat is very changeable depending on your preference as a caller. The reason for that is if the enemy team has a fast lineup, as I said in the last video, it is a lot more important to not split up your forces. So if the enemy team has a lot of Cromwells, or if they have a lot of mediums at all, I wouldn't send the guys north. I would just bring them south like this, and you stick the Hellcat probably around here to start. This Type 64 will spot anything crossing like this. You can play him aggressively in mid if you really want to, just make sure he has support fire if you do that. If you don't want to do that, you send him south, straight down here, and then he goes into like this pocket here. The Type 64 spots them so that you know if they're crossing the north or if they're pushing aggressively south. If they're playing south, outtrade them. If they're playing north, you stick 185M here, 185M here, and congratulations, they can't push you. The other 3 tanks just go straight towards mid, and whatever you need to do with them, you figure it out. Opposite side, pretty similar. If they have slowish tanks, you can send the 2 tanks up north without having too big of a risk. You have the light tank spotting around the mid. You have 3 tanks down south. You have the Hellcat supporting either side as need be. Nice and easy. Again, if they're a fast lineup, don't send the stuff up north. If you think they're going to play north, you can stick 1 tank here, and you bring the other 4 down south. That's it. And now we're on to the main reason why bringing heavy tanks is objectively a terrible, terrible idea at tier 6. Because if you have a heavy tank, it's going to spawn up here, and it's going to die. But because it's a Hellcat, all you have to do, bring the Hellcat straight across like this, bring 1, 2 85Ms down this way. Whatever fast tanks you have can go all the way down to the corner. I just do the 85Ms, it's nice and simple. You bring 1 at 85M there. You can send the Type down to the corner to make sure that you have control over that before the fighting even starts. You can bring him up and around to spot out this area. You can send him even below if you really want to. This is a very risky play, but you can send him below like this so he gets up to here, and then he proxy spots anything here. Again, up to you. If they are playing full south, then just don't push south. You can leave the 85Ms back here. These guys will be able to get the crossfire going onto the enemy tanks that are playing aggressively down the south line. Hellcat will do the exact same thing. If they are playing north, all you do is spread out with all of your tanks that are already here and play below like this. These guys will spot for these guys down south, and the guys down south will be able to just shoot across as soon as the enemy team tries to play this little ridge here. And if they cap, very easy resets from here, very easy resets from here. Very easy to play the south side on this map. And here we are with the very last little bit, and again it's an exact duplicate of what we had before. We have medium tanks and TDs sitting below the ridge here, firing across at anything that's here. We have the 85Ms that are pushing all the way to the corner to fight that. We have the light tank spotting the crossing if need be. You can also send them over this way, etc, etc. If they play north, you spread out along here. If they try to cap, you can reset from here. You can bring 1 back to here to reset. You can push into their cap so that you're able to cap while you're resetting. Stuff like that. Again, very simple map, and that is the last strat. And that's it. That's every single map that is available currently in Tier 6 Strongholds. And I'm sure it'll change really soon and make this video obsolete. But until that point, I hope this helps. And something I really want you guys to be aware of is that you're going to lose a lot if you're just starting calling. And none of these tactics will be able to stop that. You're going to fail quite a bit. That's just how calling works. You have to keep practicing. So my advice to you is don't get dissuaded. Try not to yell at the people that you were calling for, and enjoy the game. Happy tanking. One last thing before I go. I'm very close to getting 2,000 subscribers, which is something I really, really appreciate. I never expected to get this far. Especially because all of this has happened in the past, like, 7 months, which is absolutely amazing to me. Anyway, the next video I wanted to do something a little bit special, and I've been getting a lot of random requests that I can't really make a full video on. But if you have any specific questions that you would like me to answer in a video, I'm going to be doing a 2,000 subscriber special where I just answer a bunch of random requests that have been in the comment section for a little while that I've been kind of ignoring. So these can be as broad as what's the best line to go for right now, or it can be something as specific as you send in a replay or a replay link, and I will try to answer a specific question that you have on that replay. Don't ask me to review the whole replay. I will not do that. All right. Thank you for watching, and now officially happy tanking.